The date is January 29, 1991. The location is the scorched, moonless border separating occupied Kuwait from Saudi Arabia. The time is just past dusk, but the darkness is absolute. To the naked eye, the desert is empty, a vast expanse of silence and sand. But through the grainy green phosphorescence of night vision optics, the desert floor is moving. Inside the cramped, sweltering turret of a T-55 tank, an Iraqi battalion commander grips the steel rim of his hatch. The air smells of diesel fumes and nervous sweat. Behind him, stretching for miles into the Kuwaiti gloom, is the iron fist of Saddam Hussein's military ambition. This is not a skirmish, this is the invasion of Khafji. For weeks, the coalition air campaign has hammered their supply lines, but tonight, the Iraqi army is striking back. The plan, orchestrated from the bunkers in Baghdad, is bold and desperate. They will drive 3 heavy armored divisions south, smash across the Saudi border, and seize the coastal city of Ras al-Khafji. The strategic logic is sound: force the Americans into a bloody ground war. The Iraqi generals believe that the American public cannot stomach the sight of body bags. They believe that if they can force a close-quarters tank battle, their battle-hardened troops, veterans of the 8-year war with Iran, will grind the soft, technological Westerners into the dust. The commander looks at his watch. It is time. The radio crackles with the order to advance. Hundreds of diesel engines roar to life simultaneously, a mechanical thunder that vibrates through the ground. The 3rd Armored Division and the 5th Mechanized Division begin to roll. Tracks grind against the hard-packed sand, kicking up dust clouds that obscure the stars. They are moving south, toward the unseen American lines. The Iraqi expectation is clear. They are waiting to see the heavy, blocky silhouettes of M60 tanks or the feared Moan Abrams tanks. They expect a wall of steel. They are prepared for a traditional, symmetrical slugfest, tank against tank, armor against armor. They have their kinetic energy penetrators loaded. They have their firing solutions calculated for heavy armor engagements. But as they cross the berms and enter Saudi territory, something is wrong. The horizon remains dark. There are no muzzle flashes from heavy cannons. There is no rumble of opposing tracks. The desert ahead seems completely abandoned. The commander peers through his sights, straining to see the enemy. Intelligence reports claimed the border was defended by elements of the United States Marines and Saudi National Guard. Where are they? The Iraqi column accelerates, confidence growing. Perhaps the Americans have fled? Perhaps the relentless airstrikes were a bluff and the ground forces are hollow? Then, the chaos begins. It starts not with a bang, but with a streak of red light tearing through the darkness. The lead T-62 tank in the vanguard simply erupts. 1 second, it is a 60-ton war machine. The next, it is a burning pyre, its turret blown clear off the chassis. The radio network explodes into panic. "Contact front! Contact front!" screams a tank captain. "Where is the fire coming from?" The battalion commander frantically scans the horizon. He looks for the telltale heat signature of a heavy tank engine. He looks for the large thermal footprint of an Abrams. He sees nothing. The desert floor is cold. Another round impacts a Type 69 tank to his left. The armor is pierced instantly. The ammunition cooks off, sending a geyser of white-hot sparks into the night sky. "Engage! Engage!" the commander shouts. "Target the tanks!" "I cannot see them," the gunner screams back. "There are no targets! There are no tanks!" This is the impossible event. The Iraqi armored column, one of the largest concentrations of armor in the Middle East, is being dismantled piece by piece, but they are fighting ghosts. The enemy is firing automatic cannons, rapid, rhythmic thumping sounds, and launching wire-guided missiles, but the source of the fire is invisible. Whatever is out there is moving impossibly fast. The Iraqi gunners try to traverse their turrets, chasing shadows. By the time they swing their heavy guns toward a muzzle flash, the enemy is gone, repositioned to a new flank, pouring fire into the thin side armor of the Iraqi personnel carriers. This is not the battle they prepared for. This is not the Battle of Kursk or the tank duels of the Iran-Iraq War. This is something entirely new, and the confusion in the Iraqi ranks is turning into terror. They are fighting a phantom force that hits hard, vanishes, and hits again from a different angle. This analysis of the Cold War's most pivotal tactical shifts is brought to you by Cold War Impact. If you want to understand the hidden history behind modern military dominance, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a briefing. Back on the Saudi border, the confusion deepens. The Iraqi advance has not stopped, but it has slowed to a crawl. The sheer weight of their numbers pushes them forward, simply by momentum. They begin to enter the outskirts of Khafji, their tracks crushing the quiet streets. In the rear command post, the Iraqi generals analyze the frantic reports coming from the front. They are trying to build a mental map of the battlefield, but the pieces do not fit. General Salah Aboud Mahmoud, commanding the 3rd Corps, listens to the radio traffic. His officers report heavy resistance, yet they cannot identify the unit stopping them. They report taking fire from 25mm chains, guns, and anti-tank missiles. It must be infantry, one intelligence officer suggests. Only infantry would be this hard to spot. Infantry cannot destroy a T-62 tank from 2 kilometers away in pitch darkness. Another officer counters. It must be heavy armor. The Americans are hiding their tanks in Hull, down positions. But where are the thermal signatures? The general demands. Our optics are inferior, yes, but we should see the heat of a turbine engine. We see nothing but small sparks moving at 60 kilometers per hour. The confusion leads to a fatal miscalculation. The Iraqi command convinces themselves that they are facing a light screening force, perhaps a reconnaissance unit that got lucky. They believe the main American line has broken or retreated. They do not realize that the light screening force is actually holding the line. They order the columns to press harder. Ignore the harassment. The order goes down the line. Push into the city, seize Khafji. Once we are in the urban environment, their advantages vanish. As the Iraqi armor pushes deeper into the trap, the reports become more bizarre. Tank commanders claim they are being circled, not flank circled. They report enemy vehicles driving between their formations, firing point blank into their rear engine decks, and then speeding away before the turrets can rotate. One panicked transmission captured by Allied signals intelligence sums up the Iraqi perspective perfectly. They are everywhere. They are like rats. We cannot hit them. Send air support. Send artillery. But Iraqi air support is non-existent, grounded by the threat of coalition fighters. And their artillery is blind, unable to target a foe that never stops moving. The Iraqi forces manage to enter Khafji, occupying the city. To Saddam Hussein, this is a victory. He announces to the world that the infidels have been repelled, that Iraqi boots are on Saudi soil. He believes he has forced the Americans into a stalemate. He envisions a glorious urban siege, a Stalingrad in the desert, where his tanks will act as mobile pillboxes, impenetrable and deadly. But inside the city, the soldiers on the ground feel no sense of victory. They park their tanks in alleyways and under arches, trying to hide from the sky. They set up defensive perimeters, waiting for the American counterattack. They wait for the Moan Abrams tanks to come rolling down the main boulevard, creating a target they can actually fight. They wait. And they wait. The heavy American tanks never come. Instead, the darkness outside the city begins to hum again. The same strange, high-pitched whining of diesel engines. The same rapid-fire thumping of medium-caliber cannons. The Iraqi battalion commander in Khafji looks at his tactical map. He sees the symbol for his heavy armor regiment. He sees the symbol for the enemy, a question mark. He does not know that he is being watched. He does not know that miles away, looking through thermal sights that turn the night into green daylight, a distinct, angular silhouette is cresting a dune. It is not a tank. It is something taller, lighter, and far more fragile. To the Iraqi military doctrine, based on Soviet principles of mass and armor thickness, what is happening is impossible. A force without heavy tanks should not be able to arrest the advance of a mechanized division. It defies the physics of warfare. If you bring a knife to a gunfight, you die. If you bring a light vehicle to a tank fight, you are destroyed. Yet, the burning hulks of T-55 tanks littering the road to Khafji tell a different story. The Iraqis are hemorrhaging armor. They are being bled dry by an enemy they cannot pin down. As Part 1 closes, the mystery is fully established. The Iraqis have taken the city, but they are trapped in a cage of their own making. They believe they have defeated the American vanguard, or that the Americans are too cowardly to fight close. They have no idea that the vehicle tearing them apart is not a main battle tank, but a machine that was never designed to fight tanks head-on. They are about to learn a lesson in mobility and lethality that will rewrite the textbooks of military history. But for now, in the dark streets of Khafji, they only know one thing. Something is out there, and it is hunting them. The sun rises over the Saudi border on January 30, 1991, revealing the scale of the carnage. To the Iraqi commanders peering through their periscopes, the desert floor looks like a graveyard of steel. But the mystery that plagued them during the night has not vanished with the darkness. It has only solidified into a terrifying tactical puzzle. In the cold light of day, the Iraqi tank crews can finally see the tracks left by their attackers. This is the first clue that something is fundamentally wrong. They expect to see the wide, deep ruts of heavy Monet Abrams tanks, churned earth that signifies a 70-ton Predator. Instead, the sand is crisscrossed with tire marks. Thin, rubber tire marks. The realization ripples through the Iraqi communications network. They are not fighting heavy armor. They are facing wheeled vehicles. In the rigid hierarchy of military hardware, this should be a massacre. A wheeled vehicle is a coffin. It has negligible armor, barely enough to stop a machine gun bullet, let alone a 100mm high-explosive tank shell. By all conventional logic, the Iraqi heavy divisions should simply drive over them. Yet, the burning skeletons of T-62 tanks and BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles smouldering on the horizon suggest otherwise. The coffins are winning. Back in Baghdad, the strategic picture is becoming muddy. The Iraqi High Command, schooled in Soviet deep battle doctrine, operates on the principle of mass and mathematical certainty. They calculate victory based on armor thickness, gun caliber, and unit density. By their math, the sector defending the approach to Khafji is weak. Intelligence indicates it is held by the 1st and 2nd Light Armored Infantry Battalions of the US Marines. The key word is light. They have no staying power, a senior Iraqi strategist assures his generals. They are a speed bump. Push the 5th Mechanized Division through them, crush them with weight. But on the ground, the speed bump is fighting back with a ferocity and precision that defies the math. The engagement that unfolds over the next 12 hours is a masterclass in asymmetrical violence. It is a battle between the elephant and the mosquito. The elephant, the Iraqi armored column, is powerful, but slow. Its vision is limited. Its reaction time is sluggish. Its turret traverse speed, the time it takes to swing the main gun, is agonizingly slow against a fast-moving target. The mosquito, the mystery American force, is buzzing around the periphery. These American crews are operating on a doctrine of shoot and scoot. They never stay static. They pop up from behind a sand dune, unleash a torrent of fire, and vanish before the Iraqi gunners can even lay their sights on the target. Inside a T-55 tank, the terror is palpable. The gunner screams that he cannot track the targets. Every time he aligns the crosshairs, the American vehicle is already moving laterally at 50 miles per hour, bouncing over the rough terrain like a rally car. The Iraqi shells land harmlessly in the sand, trailing the speeding targets by seconds. Meanwhile, the return fire is devastatingly accurate. The Americans are using a weapon that sounds like a distinct, rhythmic jackhammer. It is not the boom of a tank cannon, but a rapid thump, 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 thump. These rounds are small, but they are arriving in clusters of 5 or 6, hammering the same spot on the Iraqi armor repeatedly. While these small rounds cannot penetrate the thick front slope of a main battle tank, they are tearing everything else apart. They are shredding the optics, blinding the Iraqi crews. They are punching through the thinner side armor of the armored personnel carriers, turning the troop compartments into shrapnel blenders. They are detonating the external fuel drums mounted on the rear of the tanks. And then, there is the silent killer. Mixed in with the rapid cannon fire is a different threat. The Iraqi crews watch in horror as thin wires trail through the air, guiding heavy missiles with pinpoint accuracy. These missiles fly slower than tank shells, almost lazily, but their impact is absolute. When one connects with a T-62 tank, the shape-charged jet burns through the steel turret like a blowtorch through butter. The ammunition inside the tank ignites instantly, popping the turret off the hull like a champagne cork. The Iraqi advance stalls not because they lack firepower, but because they are being blinded and hamstrung. Their formation begins to fracture. The discipline breaks. Tank commanders, terrified of the invisible missiles and the swarming wheeled demons, order their drivers to halt or reverse. They seek cover in the folds of the terrain, but there is no cover from an enemy that moves faster than you can think. The confusion is compounded by the American use of the electromagnetic spectrum. The Iraqi radios are jammed or filled with static. Coordination becomes impossible. A platoon of Type 69 tanks finds itself isolated, cut off from the main body. They see dust clouds approaching from three sides. They rotate their turrets frantically, trying to find a target. Suddenly, the mosquitoes are among them. The American vehicles close the distance, driving dangerously close inside the minimum engagement range of the big tank guns. It is a suicidal maneuver on paper, but in practice, it is brilliant. The long barrels of the Iraqi tanks physically cannot depress low enough to hit the small, squat vehicles zipping past their hulls. The Americans rake the decks of the tanks with machine gun fire, forcing the commanders to button up inside their hatches. Blind and deaf, the Iraqi behemoths are helpless. They are being herded like cattle. By the afternoon of January 30, the narrative of the invasion has shifted. The Iraqi generals wanted a grinding war of attrition. Instead, they have stumbled into a hornet's nest. They have captured Khafji, yes, but the cost to get there has been exorbitant, and the supply lines feeding the city are now running a gauntlet of death. The Iraqi leadership is forced to pause and reassess. They cannot understand why the American lines have not collapsed. Where is their heavy armor? They demand. Why have they not committed the Moan tanks? They suspect a trap. They believe the light vehicles are bait, designed to lure the Iraqi main force out of position so the real hammer can fall. They do not realize that the bait is the hammer. As the sun sets on the second day, the mystery deepens. The Iraqis in Khafji are digging in, turning the city into a fortress, preparing for the inevitable counterattack. They position their tanks in alleys, creating kill zones. They set up RPG teams on rooftops. They are ready to fight the American heavy armor they know must be coming. But out in the desert, the American Marines are doing something unexpected. They aren't waiting for the Abrams tanks to arrive to save them. They are rearming, they are refueling, and they are turning their light-wheeled vehicles toward the city. The stage is set for a confrontation that defies all military logic. A force of scouts is preparing to assault a city held by a mechanized division. To the Iraqi defenders looking out at the gathering darkness, the silence is worse than the noise. They know the mosquitoes are out there, watching, waiting. And they know that armor thickness means nothing if you cannot hit what is killing you. Night falls again over the city of Khafji. The date is now January 31. The situation inside the city has devolved into a claustrophobic nightmare. But for the Iraqi occupiers, there is a strange, misplaced sense of confidence. They have successfully seized the city. They have established defensive perimeters. Their T-55 tanks and T-62 tanks are parked in the narrow intersections, their barrels covering the long avenues. Infantry squads occupy the rooftops of the low-rise concrete buildings, armed with RPG-7 rocket launchers. From the perspective of conventional military doctrine, the Iraqi position is formidable. Urban warfare is the great equalizer. In the twisted maze of a city, the technological advantages of a superior enemy are supposed to be nullified. Long-range sights are useless in a street fight. High-speed maneuver is impossible in gridlocked alleys. Here, it is a knife fight in a phone booth. The Iraqi commanders believe that if the Americans come for them now, they will have to bleed for every block. But the silence of the night is about to be broken by a sound that will haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. It is not the roar of a jet engine, nor the rumble of a tank. It is a low, persistent drone, like a heavy generator humming in the sky. High above the cloud layer, invisible to the naked eye and untouched by Iraqi anti-aircraft fire, orbits the Angel of Death, the AC-130 Spectre gunship. The twist in this battle is not just about the vehicles on the ground, it is about the invisible thread connecting them to the sky. The Iraqi generals operate on a top-down command structure. A tank commander sees a target, radios his captain, who radios the battalion, who requests artillery. The process is slow, rigid, and bureaucratic. The Americans, however, are playing a completely different game. The mosquitoes, those light-wheeled vehicles buzzing around the city outskirts, are not just shooters. They are nodes in a digital network. Every vehicle commander is a potential forward observer. And inside the city, trapped on the rooftops of the very buildings the Iraqis are searching, are small teams of US Marine reconnaissance soldiers. These recon Marines are the eyes of the storm. They are hiding in plain sight, whispering into encrypted radios, staring down at the Iraqi tanks parked directly beneath them. They are not firing their rifles. They are painting targets with lasers and coordinates. The slaughter begins with terrifying precision. On a main street near the clock tower, an Iraqi mechanized infantry platoon is resting near their BMP-1 vehicles. They feel safe. Suddenly, the air around them seems to vibrate. There is no whistle of incoming artillery, just a sudden, violent eruption of earth and steel. A 105mm howitzer shell, fired from the circling AC-130 gunship miles above, slams directly into the lead vehicle. The explosion is surgically precise. The vehicle simply ceases to exist. Panic ensues. "Mortars! We are under mortar fire!" An officer screams. They scatter, running for the cover of a nearby building. But the enemy in the sky can see through walls. The gunship switches weapons to its 40mm Bofors cannon. Thump, 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 thump. The rounds punch through the concrete roof of the hideout as if it were cardboard. The Iraqi soldiers realize with dawning horror that there is no cover. They are being watched by thermal optics that detect the heat of their bodies through the cool night air. The God's eye view of the battle allows the Americans to dismantle the Iraqi defense one unit at a time without ever exposing a single soldier to direct fire. Down on the ground, the Mosquitoes change their tactics. The light armored vehicles LAVs are no longer just skirmishing, they are breaching. The Iraqi defenders at the southern checkpoint hear the approach of diesel engines. They ready their RPGs, expecting a slow, cautious advance. Instead, the American vehicles come screaming out of the darkness at highway speeds. They are driving into the city. This is the thrill of the engagement. A high-speed mechanized raid into an occupied urban center. The LAV-25 vehicles are operating in wolf packs. They drift around corners, their turrets stabilized, their chain guns spinning. An Iraqi T-55 tank crew spots a pair of LAVs racing down a parallel street. The tank commander orders his gunner to traverse. The massive hydraulic turret groans as it rotates. It is too slow. The LAVs are already gone, disappearing down a side alley. But they haven't fled. They have flanked. Moments later, the T-55 tank is rocked by a violent explosion from the rear. An LAV has circled the block, popped up behind the tank, and fired a Tau wire-guided missile into the engine block. The Iraqi crew bails out, coughing in the black smoke, only to be cut down by the coaxial machine guns of the retreating American vehicle. The confusion among the Iraqi rank and file is absolute. They are fighting an enemy that refuses to stand still. Every time they try to fix the Americans in place, the Americans are somewhere else. It is a chaotic, three-dimensional ballet of violence. The Iraqis are looking out the windows for infantry, while death rains from the sky. They are looking down the street for tanks, while death speeds past them in the alleyways. The psychological impact is devastating. Iraqi soldiers begin to abandon their vehicles. They realize that being inside a tank is a death sentence. The heavy armor, which was supposed to be their greatest strength, has become a magnet for the invisible missiles. In the center of the city, the drama reaches its peak. The Iraqi secret police and special forces are closing in on the trapped Marine recon teams. They know the Americans are on the roof. They are storming the stairwells, grenade pins pulled. The recon Marines are out of options. They are lightly armed. They cannot hold off a company of infantry. So, they make the call that no soldier ever wants to make. They call for danger close air support. "Put it on the roof," the Marine whispers into his radio. "We are in the north corner. Burn the rest." High above, the pilot of an AH-1 Cobra helicopter, hovering in the pitch black, acknowledges. The Cobra dips its nose. To the Iraqi soldiers kicking down the door to the roof, the world ends in a blinding flash of rockets and 20mm cannon fire. The helicopter unleashes a torrent of munitions just meters away from the friendly troops. The precision is breathtaking. The Iraqi assault team is vaporized. The Marines, shaken and covered in dust, are alive. Simultaneously, the LAV wolf packs smash through the Iraqi cordon to link up with the trapped teams. The extraction is chaotic and violent. The 25mm Bushmaster cannons on the LAVs are working overtime, soaring through cinder block walls to suppress enemy fire. The sound is deafening, a continuous metallic ripping noise that drowns out the screams of the wounded. As the column of American light vehicles fights its way out of the city, carrying the rescued Marines, the Iraqi commanders are left staring at their maps in disbelief. They have not lost a few skirmishes. They are losing entire battalions. And they still haven't seen a single American tank. The Iraqi Third Corps commander, General Mahmoud, is furious. He demands answers from his subordinates. "How are they destroying our armor?" he yells. "What are they using?" The reports coming back are fragmented and terrified. "They are shooting through the buildings, sir," one captain reports, breathless. "Their bullets explode inside the armor." "They are using a new weapon," another claims, "a rapid-fire cannon that eats steel." The general slams his fist on the table. He knows about the 25mm cannon. It is a standard weapon for infantry fighting vehicles. It is designed to kill troops and light trucks. It is physics-defying for such a small-caliber weapon to be knocking out main battle tanks. The math doesn't work. A 25mm slug should bounce off the glacis plate of a T-55 tank like a pebble. Yet, the tanks are burning. The mystery that has plagued them for 48 hours is about to be solved, but the answer will bring no comfort. The general is about to learn that the Americans have not rewritten the laws of physics. They have simply exploited a fatal flaw in the design of the Soviet-made war machines, a flaw that the light American chain guns are uniquely suited to exploit. The battle for Khafji is over. The smoke is beginning to clear, drifting south toward the oil fires of Kuwait. The Iraqi Third Corps has been broken, not by the heavy hammer of the US Army, but by a force they derisively dismissed as a speed bump. As the surviving Iraqi units retreat north across the border, dragging their wounded and abandoning their equipment, the true magnitude of the shock sets in. It is only now, in the silence of the aftermath, that the technical reality of what happened is revealed. It is a revelation that will send tremors through every military academy in the world, from Moscow to Beijing. General Salah Aboud Mahmoud and his staff are left to conduct a mental autopsy of the disaster. They expected to lose tanks to airstrikes, that is the cost of doing business against the American Air Force. They expected to lose tanks to other tanks, that is the nature of armored warfare. But they did not expect to lose an entire armored offensive to a vehicle that weighs less than 14 tons and rolls on rubber tires. The shock is not just that they lost, it is how they lost. The primary culprit, the instrument of their destruction, is finally identified. It is the M242 Bushmaster chain gun. To the Soviet-trained Iraqi mind, this weapon is a toy. It is a 25mm cannon. In the world of main battle tanks, where 125mm guns are the standard, a 25mm round is considered a nuisance, something designed to shoot at helicopters or trucks. It should legally be impossible for such a small caliber weapon to dismantle a T-55 tank. But the Iraqis failed to understand the physics of the American ammunition. The US Marines were firing the M791 APDST round. This stands for armor-piercing discarding sabot with tracer. When this round leaves the barrel, it is traveling at over 4,400 feet per second hypersonic speed. It is a sub-caliber dart made of super-dense tungsten alloy. Here is the terrifying reveal. The Marines did not need to penetrate the thick front armor of the Iraqi tanks to kill them. They simply needed to render them useless. The impossible destruction the Iraqis witnessed was the result of a tactic known as mission killing. The high-velocity tungsten darts shredded the external fittings of the Soviet tanks. They shattered the glass prisms of the gunners' sights, instantly blinding the crew. They severed the hydraulic lines, freezing the turrets in place. They perforated the external fuel drums mounted on the rear decks, turning the tanks into moving Molotov cocktails. An Iraqi tank commander might survive the initial impact, but he would find himself inside a steel box that was on fire, unable to move his gun and unable to see his enemy. He was effectively buried alive. Furthermore, the rapid rate of fire, 200 rounds per minute, created a psychological effect that no manual could prepare for. When a T-55 tank is hit by a single heavy tank shell, it is a massive, singular concussion. But when it is hit by a burst from a Bushmaster, it sounds like a continuous, deafening bell ringing inside the hull. The sheer violence of the impacts, hammering against the steel armor, caused spalling flakes of metal breaking off the interior wall and ricocheting around the crew compartment like shrapnel. The crews bailed out not because their tank was destroyed, but because the environment inside had become uninhabitable. But the 25mm gun was only half of the equation. The second part of the reveal is the weapon system that the Iraqis mistook for a standard vehicle. The Iraqi tank crews reported seeing hundreds of the Mosquito vehicles. They assumed they were all the same. They were wrong. Hidden within the formations of standard LAV-25 vehicles were the LAV-AT variants, the anti-tank models. To the naked eye in the darkness, they looked identical. But instead of a chain gun, The LAV-AT carried a hammer that could crack the earth. The Emerson 9001 turret, equipped with twin Tau-2 wire-guided missiles. This was the invisible hand that had been punching through turrets from 2 miles away. The Tau-2 missile carries a 6-kilogram-shaped charge warhead. Upon impact, it detonates to create a jet of molten copper moving at Mach 25. This jet does not smash through armor. It flows through it like water through a screen door. The shock for the Iraqi generals is the realization of the range disparity. The effective range of a T-55 tank's main gun, at night, with primitive infrared searchlights, is perhaps 800 to 1,000 meters. The effective range of the Tau missile system, utilizing thermal sights, is 3,750 meters. The Americans could see them, lock onto them, and kill them from a distance of nearly 4 kilometers, almost 3 times the distance the Iraqis could return fire. The Iraqi tanks were dying before they even knew they were in a battle. It was not a fight, it was an execution by remote control. This technological mismatch exposed a fatal flaw in the entire Soviet military philosophy that Saddam Hussein had purchased. The Soviet doctrine relied on quantity has a quality of its own. They built tanks that were low profile, simple to operate, and heavily armored on the front arc. They were designed to rush across the plains of Germany in massive waves. But in the complex terrain of Khafji, against a highly mobile, sensor-rich enemy, the Soviet design was a death trap. The low profile meant the gun could not depress enough to shoot the small LAVs when they got close. The thick front armor was useless when the fast-moving Marines flanked to the sides, and the simple optics meant they were fighting blind in the age of thermal imaging. The ultimate reveal, however, is not about the hardware. It is about the software, the human element. The Iraqi invasion force was a centralized, rigid hierarchy. Officers waited for orders. Initiative was discouraged. When the plan fell apart, the army froze. The US Marines, operating in their light vehicles, were a decentralized network. A 22-year-old corporal commanding an LAV had the authority to call in artillery, direct airstrikes, or change his vector of attack without asking permission from a general. This OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, moved so much faster than the Iraqi decision cycle that the Iraqis were reacting to things that had happened 10 minutes ago. As the wreckage is examined, intelligence officers find T-62 tanks with their turrets facing the wrong way rearward. They were trying to retreat when they were hit. They find BMP personnel carriers that are literally sieve-like, riddled with hundreds of 25mm holes, the result of a single mad minute of fire from a Marine platoon. The Battle of Khafji was the first major ground engagement of the Gulf War, and it served as a terrifying omen for the Iraqi High Command. They had sent their best mechanized units to test the blood of the Americans. They expected to find a soft, casualty-averse enemy that would crumble in close combat. Instead, they found a buzzsaw. They found an enemy that could fight at night better than they could fight during the day. They found an enemy whose light vehicles were more lethal than their heavy tanks. And most shockingly, they found that the era of simple steel armor was over. The mystery is solved. The ghosts were not ghosts. They were the vanguard of a new age of warfare, maneuver warfare, where speed, information, and precision firepower render heavy, dumb iron obsolete. The Iraqis did not lose because they lacked courage. They lost because they brought a 19th century mindset to a 21st century battlefield. And the final, lingering horror for the generals in Baghdad, this was just the Marine Corps. This was just the Light Force. The heavy US Army divisions, with thousands of Moan Abrams tanks, had not even started their engines yet. If the Mosquitoes could do this to the Republican Guard, what would the Elephant do? March 11, 1978. A concrete-lined bunker buried deep in the earth near Magdeburg, East Germany. This is the nerve center for a key sector of the Vojska PVO, the Soviet Air Defense Forces. Colonel General Ivan Lebedev watches the glowing green radar sweeps. His face, illuminated by the phosphorus screens, is a mask of stern confidence. Below him, rows of operators murmur into their headsets, orchestrating a vast, invisible shield. This shield is the pride of the Soviet Union. It is not just a collection of guns. It is an ideology made manifest in steel and electronics. It is a layered, integrated, and brutal web of ground control intercept stations, tens of thousands of surface-to-air missiles from the high-altitude SA-5, Gammon to the nimble SA-8 Gecko and squadrons of MiG-23 Flogger interceptors, their variable geometry wings promising lethality at any altitude. The PVO is the largest, most expensive, and most densely packed air defense network ever constructed. It is a fortress wall stretching from the Arctic Circle to the Black Sea. It is the machine that devoured Gary Powers and his invincible U-2. It is the system that bled the US Air Force white over the skies of Hanoi. To General Lebedev, this bunker is the brain of an impenetrable body. Today, a massive Warsaw Pact air defense exercise is underway. Lebedev is simulating a full-scale NATO surgical strike. His operators are tracking dozens of enemy aircraft represented by their own forces as they attempt to penetrate the wall. His controllers are vectoring interceptors, locking targets, and firing simulated missiles with cold, practiced efficiency. The exercise is flawless. The wall holds. Then, something anomalous appears. A new plot, originating from deep within West German airspace. It's large. Its radar cross-section is significant, like a B-52 bomber. But it's not behaving like a bomber. It's not making a high-speed, low-altitude penetration run. It's not streaking for a target. It is, instead, flying a slow, lazy, oval-shaped pattern, a racetrack. It just hangs there, miles from the border, at 30,000 feet, spinning in a circle. It is a massive, obvious, and seemingly useless target. A junior lieutenant reports it. Comrade General, target designated 30 Alpha. Looks like a transport. Possibly electronic warfare? Lebedev stares at the dot. It is an insult. It's almost mocking. It is doing nothing, he says, his voice flat. Ignore it. Focus on the low-level penetrators. The exercise resumes, but over the next 15 minutes, the flawless drill disintegrates. A squadron of enemy F-4 Phantoms, which were supposed to be destroyed by an SA-6 battery, suddenly veer off course, plunge into a radar shadow in the terrain, and pop up directly over their target, completely evading the missile trap. 2 MiG 23 seconds, vectored to intercept a flight of invading, phone 104 seconds, report their targets have vanished. Instead, they are ambushed from 6 o'clock by another flight of Phantoms they never saw on radar, that the ground controllers never saw. Reports flood the bunker, simulated ambushes fail, SAM batteries fire on empty sky, Lebedev's interceptors are being systematically picked apart. The enemy pilots are acting with impossible prescience. They seem to know the exact location of every Soviet radar, every missile battery, and every fighter before they are even detected. Lebedev stands, his knuckles white as he grips the console rail. He looks past the chaos of his screens at the wall map. His eyes fix on the single slow-moving dot. Target 30 Alpha. Still orbiting. Still watching. It's not a target. It's a conductor. It's a general. It is a phantom command post, hovering in the sky, directing the entire battle. He realizes with a sickening cold dread that his entire, vast, multi-billion ruble fortress is not a wall. It is a glass cage. Every asset, every plane, every radar is perfectly visible to an enemy he cannot see, an enemy directed from a place he cannot touch. His impenetrable shield has been rendered utterly, humiliatingly obsolete. This was the dawn of a new, terrifying reality, one that would cement American dominance in the skies for decades. To understand the full story of this revolutionary new form of Cold War impact, subscribe to our channel. The Soviet confidence General Lebedev felt that morning was not arrogance, it was earned. The Protivovozdushnaya Oborona, or PVO, was not just a branch of the military, it was a national obsession. Born from the trauma of the Second World War, where the Red Army paid for its lack of air cover in millions of lives, the PVO was built on a simple, ironclad doctrine. The ground controls the sky. The PVO was a hierarchical, centralized, brute force system. The pilot in his cockpit was seen as a weapon system operator, an extension of the will of the Ground Control Intercept, GCI, officer in a bunker hundreds of miles away. This GCI controller had the big picture, assembled from a massive network of overlapping ground-based radars. He would guide the pilot, often with his own radar off to maintain surprise, telling him exactly where to fly, what altitude, what speed, and even when to fire his missiles. And the system worked. On May 1st, 1960, A PVO SA-2 missile battery reached up and tore Francis Gary Powers' high-altitude U-2 spy plane from the sky, handing the Soviet Union a staggering propaganda victory. The invincible CIA plane was mortal. Over North Vietnam, this doctrine was perfected. Soviet GCI controllers, manning Soviet-supplied radar and Soviet-built SA-2 seconds, orchestrated a lethal defense against America's Operation Rolling Thunder. American pilots, flying the most advanced aircraft of their day, found themselves in a nightmare. They were being tracked from the moment they left their carriers. Their F4 seconds and Phone 105 seconds were painted by fan-song radars, their headsets filled with the terrifying, escalating whine of a missile lock. They were flying blind into a trap where the enemy knew their every move. The kill ratio, which had been overwhelmingly in America's favor in Korea, plummeted. The ground, it seemed, had defeated the sky. This was the problem the Pentagon faced. The Vietnam experience proved that tactical air-to-air combat was chaotic, bloody, and being lost to a more organized ground-based system. The American solution was not to build a better ground control network. It was to sever the link entirely. It was to take the GCI bunker and put it in the air. The concept was simple, but the physics were considered impossible. The problem was ground clutter. A powerful radar on an aircraft looking down at the ground would see everything. Cars on a highway, waves on the ocean, buildings, trees. Trying to pick out a small, fast-moving fighter jet against this massive backdrop of noise was like trying to hear a whisper in a foundry. The US Navy had tried with the E-2 Hawkeye, but its radar was optimized for use over water, where the clutter was flat and predictable. Over land, it was functionally blind. The Air Force needed a technological miracle. They needed a radar that could not only look down, but could filter the entire planet out of its gaze, leaving only the targets. The project was codenamed AWACS Airborne Warning and Control System. In the late 1960s, Westinghouse Electric Corporation achieved the breakthrough. It was called Pulse Doppler radar. It was a revolutionary way of processing the radar signal. Instead of just seeing a blip, the radar measured the Doppler shift of the returning signal, the tiny change in frequency caused by the target's movement relative to the radar. In simple terms, the radar could be programmed to see only things moving at a certain velocity. The ground, the trees, the buildings, they were all moving at 0 miles per hour relative to the Earth. They could be filtered out, rendered invisible. A fighter jet, even one flying low and fast, scraping the treetops, would pop out on the screen clear as day. This miracle radar, the AN divided by APY-1, was too large for any fighter. It needed a massive platform, a mobile command center. Boeing provided the airframe, the reliable 707 jetliner. They mounted a 30-foot rotating dome, the rotordome, on 2 massive struts. Inside that dome, the radar array spun once every 10 seconds, sweeping millions of cubic miles of airspace. The result was the E-3 Sentry. It was not a fighter, it was not a bomber, it was the single most revolutionary military aircraft of the Cold War. From its operational altitude of 29,000 feet, a single E-3 could monitor all air traffic, friendly and hostile, from the Earth's surface up to the stratosphere, over a radius of more than 250 miles. It could track over 600 targets at once. It was not just a radar, it was a flying command center, packed with digital computers and 17 battle staff consoles. While General Lebedev was perfecting his rigid, ground-based fortress, the Americans had created a phantom. They had built the eye in the sky, and with it, they were about to change the very rules of war, making the PVO's massive investment in ground radar a multi-billion-ruble tombstone. General Lebedev's bunker is no longer a place of confident control. It is a chamber of mounting panic. The flawless exercise has collapsed into a rout. The operators, once so composed, are now shouting into their headsets, their voices straining with disbelief. "Target 30, Alpha," Lebedev barks, his voice cutting through the noise. He stabs a finger at the lazily orbiting plot. "That is the brain. Cut it off. Scramble the QRA flight. Vector 2 MiG 23 seconds from Altis Lager. I want that target identified or destroyed." The order is redundant. The sector commander has already scrambled the quick reaction alert fighters. 2 MiG-23 floggers, the pride of the PVO's tactical fleet, ignite their Tumansky R-29 afterburners, blast off the runway and claw for the sky. Their variable geometry wings are swept fully forward for maximum climb. Inside their cramped cockpits, Major Viktor Belenko's, a common name, not the defector. Flight lead has his radar on standby. He is flying dark, trusting his GCI controller. Volga 1, the ground controller's voice crackles in his helmet. Vector 075. Target 30, Alpha, Angels 30, range 150 kilometers. Bogey is large, subsonic. Volga 1, roger, the pilot responds. He rockets through 20,000 feet. Engaging radar. He flicks the switch. His Sapphire 2-3 radar, a powerful set, floods the sky ahead with energy. The return signal is chaos. It's not a single clean blip. His screen erupts in a snowstorm of electronic noise. It's as if a dam of white light has broken over his display. It's not just jamming. It's a solid wall of electromagnetic energy. He is blind. GCI, Volga 1, heavy jamming, my scope is useless. Request new vector. Am I clear to fire? Negative, Volga 1, you are not cleared. The target is still in international airspace. The controller's voice is tight. We are tracking you. Continue vector 075. Close to visual range. Visual range? The pilot scoffs. He is 60 kilometers away. Inside the East German bunker, General Lebedev watches the two green icons representing his MiGs creep across the tactical display. They are closing the distance. 100 kilometers, 80, 70. The massive plot of Target 30 Alpha continues its serene, indifferent circle. It doesn't turn, it doesn't accelerate, it doesn't dive, it just waits. He is showing contempt, Lebedev whispers. He wants us to come. Volga flight, bandits. The GCI controller's voice suddenly pitches into a scream. 2 contacts, fast movers, Angels 25, you're 6 o'clock, break right. Major Belenko hauls his stick over, his G-suit inflating, crushing his legs and chest. He hadn't seen them. His radar warning receiver, designed to pick up enemy lock-ons, had been silent. The ground controllers hadn't seen them. They had materialized from thin air. Miles away, floating in the placid, air-conditioned calm of the E-3 Sentry's battle cabin, Major Ken Wizard Sullivan leans back in his padded chair. He sips lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. On his circular screen, the entire air war is laid out before him like a digital chessboard. He'd been watching the two MiG 23 seconds labeled Bandit 1 and Bandit 2 since they first left the runway, 150 miles away. He watched them climb, watched their radar signals ignite, and then dissolve against the Sentry's powerful electronic warfare screen. "Look at 'em, boys," Wizard murmurs to his tracking officer. "They're blind as bats, just flying right into the basket." He had no intention of letting those MiGs get anywhere near his aircraft. The E-3 is a 707, a fat cow in pilot parlance. It's not a fighter, it's a brain. And a brain needs bodyguards. He'd been patiently observing 2 other plots, flying a combat air patrol 40 miles to the north, well outside of PVO ground radar range. These were 2 F-15 Eagles, Eagle 1 and Eagle 2. "Eagle 1, Wizard." Sullivan speaks into his headset, his voice as calm as a late-night radio host. "You have 2 bandits, Vector 195, range 60 miles. They are blind and heading for your playpen. Heads up, they are MiG 23 seconds. You are cleared to engage per ROE BVR. Wizard, Eagle 1, solid copy." The F-15 pilot's voice replies, sharp and lethal. "We're going hot, Fox 1. The F-15 pilots don't even see their targets. They don't need to. Their AN divided by APG-63 radars, guided by the data link from Wizard's E-3, look exactly where they are told. They acquire a perfect, solid lock on the MiGs. The F-15 seconds fire their AIM-7 Sparrow missiles beyond visual range. The missiles leap off the rails, invisible white spears against the blue sky, riding a radar beam straight to an enemy who doesn't even know they are being targeted. Back in the MiG-23, Major Belenko's cockpit explodes in light and sound. His radar warning receiver, silent until this very second, shrieks its highest priority tone. A launch warning. A kill shot. "Mayday! Mayday! Missile! I'm hit!" His wingman screams over the radio. Belenko sees a flash of white to his left as his wingman's flogger disintegrates into a cloud of metal confetti. He has no time to react. An instant later, his own aircraft is slammed by an invisible hammer. The world becomes a violent, tumbling vortex of fire, metal, and sky. In General Lebedev's bunker, the 2 green icons representing his elite interceptors simply blink out of existence. Silence. The only sound is the quiet hum of the ventilation fans. The operators stare at their screens, frozen. Then, Lebedev looks back at target 30 Alpha. It is still there, unmoved, unbothered. It continues its slow, lazy, perfect circle. This was not a failure. This was a vivisection. The Americans hadn't just won the engagement. They had dictated its every single term. They had dangled the E-3 as bait, knowing the PVO would have to respond. They had watched the PVO's best interceptors fly blind into a trap. They had used their own invisible fighters to execute the MiGs from 40 miles away. And the E-3. The E-3 had been the conductor, the eye, and the executioner, all while staying safely behind an impenetrable wall of electronic and military power. The psychological impact was devastating. General Lebedev's fortress, his billion-ruble wall of missiles and radars, was a joke. It could not protect its own sky. It couldn't even protect its own protectors. The Americans didn't need to fly low and fast. They didn't need to risk their pilots' lives in chaotic dogfights. They could just sit and watch and kill. The message was clear. It was an act of pure, calculated technological contempt. The rules of air warfare had been rewritten, and the Soviet Union, with its massive, inflexible, ground-based system, had just been informed that it was no longer in the game. The humiliation at Magdeburg was not an isolated incident. It was the prologue. It was the test case for a doctrine that would fundamentally break the Soviet war machine. The E-3 Sentry did not just win a single engagement. It changed the entire strategic map of Europe. The Americans, having proven the concept, now deployed it systematically. The Fat Cow 707, with its impossible all-seeing eye, became a permanent, haunting fixture on every border of the Warsaw Pact. This was no longer about random intercepts. It became a routine, a relentless, grinding campaign of electronic and psychological dominance. NATO codenamed the missions the Baltic Express. Almost daily, an E-3 Sentry would lift off from its base at Geilenkirchen in West Germany and establish a racetrack orbit over the frigid waters of the Baltic Sea. From this single, safe position in international airspace, it monitored everything. It watched the Soviet Baltic Fleet's exercises out of Kaliningrad. It tracked the readiness of PVO interceptor squadrons in Latvia and Estonia. It listened to their command and control communications. The Soviet response was predictable, frantic, and futile. A PVO sector commander in Riga, incensed by this electronic voyeur, would scramble a flight of his best MiG-21 fishbeds. "Get me a visual," he would command. "Show them our teeth." The pilots, brave and determined, would rocket into the sky. But the moment they lit their radars, their world would dissolve. Either they were met with the same blinding wall of electronic snow that had crippled the MiG 23 seconds, or worse, nothing. They would fly toward the last known contact, only to have their own radar warning receivers scream to life. "Volga 3! Locked! Locked from the west! 6 o'clock!" Out of the sun or from below the radar clutter, a flight of Danish F-16 seconds or West German F-4 Phantoms would bounce them. The NATO pilots, their voices cool and casual on the radio, were being fed a perfect real-time picture from the AWACS. They knew the MiGs' altitude, airspeed, and heading before the Soviet pilots had even finished their climb. The MiGs, flying blind and with their ground controllers screaming contradictory commands, would be forced to break off the engagement, dump fuel, and flee back to their base. No shots were fired. None needed to be. The message was delivered. "We see you. You cannot see us. This is not your sky." This systematic dismantling of the PVO's power repeated itself across the globe. In the far north, E-3 Seconds orbited over the Duke Gap, the choke point between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. Here, they worked in lethal concert with the US Navy's P-3 Orion anti-submarine aircraft. The Soviet Northern Fleet's primary wartime mission was to surge its nuclear missile submarines and Tu-16 Badger bombers into the North Atlantic to cut off America's reinforcement route to Europe. The AWACS made this mission impossible. A Soviet Tu-16 crew, flying a simulated strike profile, would hugging the waves to stay below ground radar. They believed they were invisible. But high above, at 30,000 feet, the E-3's pulse Doppler radar filtered out the clutter of the Atlantic waves and saw the bomber clear as day. "Viking flight," the AWACS controller would vector. "Target is a Badger, 2 to 100 miles north of the gap. Angels 5 to 100. He is all yours." The Tu-16 crew's first indication that anything was wrong would be the sudden, shocking appearance of two U.S. Navy F-14 Tomcats, their wings swept back, their crews giving a polite, predatory wave as they settled in on their wingtips. The F-14 seconds had been vectored from their carrier, the USS Eisenhower, from over 1 to 100 miles away. The Soviet bomber, its mission a failure, would be escorted back to the Kola Peninsula, its crew demoralized, their fuel wasted. But the single, most terrifying demonstration of this new doctrine, the event that sent a shockwave all the way to the Politburo, did not involve the Americans directly. It happened in 1982, in the skies over Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. The Syrian Arab Air Force, trained, supplied, and organized by the Soviet Union, had established a dense, modern, state-of-the-art, PVO-style air defense network in the valley. It was a perfect microcosm of the Soviet system, layers of SA-2 seconds, SA-3 seconds, and the supposedly invincible mobile SA-6 gainful missile systems, all networked with GCI radars and protected by squadrons of MiG-21 seconds and the advanced MiG-23 seconds. On June 9, 1982, the Israeli Air Force decided to eliminate it. The result was not a battle, it was a slaughter. The Israelis had their own version of the Eye in the Sky, the smaller, carrier-capable E-2 Hawkeye. As the battle began, Israeli E-2 seconds orbited safely off the coast, over the Mediterranean. They watched as the entire Syrian air defense network activated. They mapped every single SAM battery, every single ground radar, every single frequency. Then, they orchestrated the attack. The E-2 seconds data-linked this perfect real-time map to the F-15 seconds and F-16 seconds. The Israeli pilots flew into the valley, knowing the exact location of every threat. Drones were sent in to light up the Syrian radars, which were then destroyed by anti-radiation missiles. The Syrian Air Force scrambled its fighters to defend the SAMs. It was exactly what the Israelis and the E-2 controllers were waiting for. Syrian pilots, using Soviet GCI doctrine, were vectored by their ground controllers. They flew, as trained, dark and blind, listening for instructions. They flew directly into a perfectly orchestrated ambush. The Israeli F-15 pilots, guided by the Hawkeye, had total situational awareness. They could see every single Syrian aircraft on their displays. They employed beyond visual range tactics, firing AIM-7 Sparrow missiles at targets they had not even seen. The Syrian pilots, in their MiG-23 seconds, had no idea they were under attack until their wingmen exploded. Those who survived the missile volleys and tried to dogfight were met by F-16 seconds that descended from above, guided by the E-2, achieving perfect 6 o'clock kill shots. The battle lasted 2 days. The final tally was chilling. Syria lost 19 surface-to-air missile batteries and 86 aircraft, primarily MiG-21 seconds and MiG-23 seconds. The Israeli Air Force lost 0 aircraft in air-to-air combat. The Bekaa Valley turkey shoot was the Soviet doctrine's obituary. It was a public, brutal, and undeniable demonstration that their entire multi-trillion ruble investment in air defense